Even Trump cannot compare with Kissinger. And Kissinger flew to Riyadh and met Faisal, who we have respect for him, but Faisal didn't have more than peanuts in his head at that time. And he made a deal with Faisal, in consequence of which something called the petrodollar was born. That instead of the US dollar being backed by gold, the US dollar will now be backed by oil. And Saudi Arabia said goodbye to truth. Saudi Arabia said goodbye to truth. When Saudi Arabia agreed that they will sell oil, but you can only buy it with US dollars. That is the birth of the petrodollar. And as a consequence, the United States got out of no man's land, and the US dollar flew higher than ever flew before. When a people are oppressed, oppression, it naturally results in negative feelings towards the oppressor. There is oppression today in many parts of the world. And if I point out that oppression and you feel uncomfortable about it, that's not my problem, that's yours. You can't recognize oppression because it's inconvenient to do so. Okay? It is politically inconvenient to do so. There was oppression in this part of the world, in Southeast Asia. It would not be necessary for me to point out and identify the oppression. But that oppression has resulted in negative feelings for each other. One of the ways in which we can address the problem is by calling a spade and recognizing the evil which was done by modern Western civilization in many parts of the world. Everywhere they went, they left their bloody footprints. Everywhere they went, they corrupted mankind. And they spread their tentacles all over the world. Modern Western civilization, including this part of the world. And they left nastiness behind. One of which, of course, is that they remove real money from the market. Money with intrinsic value. You're a financial analyst. I'm an eschatologist. And they left real money with intrinsic value. They removed it from the market. And they replaced it with bogus, fraudulent, sinful money, which they are using to rip off mankind, to impoverish the masses around the world, to reduce them to destitution, and eventually to enslave them. Do I need to speak more? Why did Nixon do what he did in September 1971 to tear up the Bretton Woods Accord and to violate international law? The United States had obligations under international law to redeem US dollars for gold at the rate of $35 for 1 ounce of gold. This is the Articles of Agreement of the International Monetary Fund. As a consequence, while all the rest of currencies, now we have a new word we never had before in human history, something called currencies. Mankind had gold and silver coins all over the world. You could travel anywhere in the world and you could buy and sell with the same money. And then came these people with only peanuts in their head. And they changed that monetary system, which was universally applicable and made so much sense. And they gave us this new system, which came from a garbage bin. All these currencies, which have no intrinsic value. They're just paper. But only one currency had some integrity, and that was His Majesty the US dollar. Because you could redeem, you're obliged to redeem. The United States government was obliged under international law to redeem US dollars for gold at $35 an ounce. Good. This is the IMF, the Articles of Agreement. Amongst those who recognized that the monetary system was bogus and fraudulent was Ahmad Sukarno in this part of the world. And as a result, today, he's forgotten, naturally. The ones that you remember are not Ahmad Sukarno. And in Europe, the most famous name of all was Charles de Gaulle. And they recognized that this was bogus. And this was favoring the United States to become wealthy at the expense of others. In this part of the world came Dr. Mahathir, who late in his life as Prime Minister then attempted to respond. And Charles de Gaulle stood up in the French National Assembly in 1966 and blasted the monetary system as unjust. I don't know any mufti in Malaysia who ever did that, who has the competence to do that. But they are muftis. And Charles de Gaulle said, okay, since the law, international law, allows us to redeem dollars for gold, we're going to do it. And the French central bank started sending dollars to the United States demanding gold. So what they did was, this was uncomfortable for them. They wouldn't want this to go on because the system will collapse. The bogus system will collapse. So they got rid of Charles de Gaulle. Yeah, they know this is called regime change. They have PhDs in that, these wicked people. But after they got rid of Charles de Gaulle, the French government that succeeded him still continued the policy of redeeming US dollars for gold, and the United States did not like that. So when in September 1971, the French government said we want $3 billion US in gold, Nixon said enough is enough. This is going to threaten the house of cards. It could collapse. And that's why he reneged on his obligations under international law. He said, in effect, we gave our word that we would redeem US dollars for gold at $35 an ounce, but we don't have to keep our word. That is modern Western civilization, a people you cannot trust. And as soon as he made this declaration, the US dollar went into a place called no man's land. The rest you should know it because you are a financial analyst. That they were on both sides of the war in October 1973, 2 years later. The Soviet Union was playing along with them, that the war should go to a draw. As soon as that war started, King Faisal in Saudi Arabia imposed an oil boycott on the United States. They knew it was coming, and they wanted it to come. And the price of oil rose by 400% from $3 a barrel to $12. And the US dollar, which had fallen to 40 from 35, it fell by 400% to 160. Even a schoolboy should be able to understand that there's something bogus in the system, that a war in the Middle East between Israel and the Arabs should affect the international currency. If you had gold and silver, that wouldn't happen. So that is why they did it. As soon as this happened, and the Arabs now getting 4 times more money than they were getting before, Kissinger then achieved the biggest con man's job in history. Nothing can, even Trump cannot compare with Kissinger. And Kissinger flew to Riyadh and met Faisal, who we have respect for him, but Faisal didn't have more than peanuts in his head at that time. And he made a deal with Faisal, in consequence of which something called the petrodollar was born. That instead of the US dollar being backed by gold, the US dollar will now be backed by oil. And Saudi Arabia said goodbye to truth. Saudi Arabia said goodbye to truth. When Saudi Arabia agreed that they will sell oil, but you can only buy it with US dollars. That is the birth of the petrodollar. And as a consequence, the United States got out of no man's land, and the US dollar flew higher than ever flew before.
So 53 years later, from that fateful day in September 1971, now the US government is $34 trillion in debt. Everybody, well, a lot of people are now concerned about the sanctity of the dollar as a reserve currency for the world, and they're flocking to other possible solutions, including gold and this other thing, Bitcoin, which you have a lot of disdain for, Imran.
The Quran, for us, is our absolute source of truth, not the mufti, not the minister, not Tom, Dick, and Harry. They don't speak with authority, not the king. The Quran speaks with authority. And the Christian, the Muslim, and the Jew, all three, believe in a father called Abraham. And the Quran says to our Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessing be upon him, commanding him, you must follow the religion of Abraham. Let me repeat that for your audience. The Quran commands Prophet Muhammad, Allah's blessing be upon him, that you must follow the religion of Abraham. The Christian believes in Abraham. The Jew believes in Abraham. So from which garbage bin did this nonsense come? Excuse my violent language. That Islam is a religion which came with Prophet Muhammad. It never existed before. And it is a religion of those who follow him. From which garbage bin did that nonsense come? When the Quran orders you follow the religion of Abraham. And every Christian believes in Abraham long before us. And every Jew believes in Abraham long before the Christian and the Muslim. Abraham is pivotally important for the Jew. So let us first of all demolish this nonsense that Islam is a religion which came with Prophet Muhammad for the first time, and it is a religion exclusive to those who follow him. I don't know from which garbage bin that nonsense came from. No, there is only one God and only one truth, and therefore only one religious way of life. Call it what you want. We say it's a religion of submission to him. I don't submit to any constitution. Chung, the constitution is not the supreme authority for me. You can put me in jail if you want for that statement. You could say it's sedition. But I don't submit to any constitution as absolute truth. I don't submit to any government as absolute truth. Okay? And I invite the Christian and the Jew and the Buddhist to do the same. Yeah, we submit to absolute truth which comes from the Lord God. That is our conception. And there is only one God, one truth, one religious way of life, but multiplicity, diversity. This is the splendor of his wisdom, that he created many different religious communities in the one true religion.
At a practical level, what does that mean for people who profess different faiths, but who live under the same sky
You
in Malaysia?
first of all must recognize you do not belong to different religions. Rather, you belong to different religious communities within the framework of the one religion, which is the religion which has come from the one God. The one God doesn't have 3 or 4 conceptions of truth, John. No. If you believe in one God, fine, you are my brother. If you believe in many gods, that's the road, go, leave me alone. Right? If there's one God, there's one truth.
And yet there are many beliefs and customs which separate people from one another. Different diets, different ways of dressing, different beliefs, different habits. How can this be so?
Well, I thank the Lord God for that multiplicity. I thank the Lord God for all this diversity. And I want to know where that idiot came from, who all of us must give up what we are eating and eat only Kentucky Fried Chicken. All of us must give up the different clothing that we have, and all of us must wear the same stupid blue jeans. Huh? All of us must give up our local languages and speak only your language, English. Why you want to transform all of mankind into one global society, monotonously so, when all through history we've had the splendor of different people, different cultures, different cuisine, different languages, different clothing, and it was a wondrous thing to travel and see the multiplicity of mankind. This is not a liability, Chang. This is an asset.